Yep.
Excellent. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Onset Communications' first webinar in a series of 4 that will focus on how our Onset Assistant helps to streamline the film crew's ability to communicate, collaborate, evaluate, to decide. My name is Daniel Lazaretos, and I'll be your host in today's session. I'd like to point out that Brian Sharp, Onset CEO, is joining us for this session. Brian has over 30 years of experience working in both film and TV productions. He founded Onset Communications to help solve communication and collaboration issues that he experienced while he was on set during productions. Before we start, just a couple of housekeeping items. Our focus today will be to show how with the Onset Assistant, a film crew can enable better on-set communication that ultimately leads to quicker and better decision-making. The Onset system used for our demo today is comprised of the following 3 components. The base station, where you can connect up to 4 camera feeds. The tablet with a custom case and an ergonomic handle, along with an external battery that can last all day. And finally, the Onset Assistant app, our app running on the tablet that makes the whole thing work. So this Onset demo will be followed up by a question and answer period. However, please keep in mind that this is an interactive session. So if you have any questions, please feel free to submit them into the chat as you think of them. And we'll answer them as we go along. And if we can't answer them right away, we'll cover them at the end of the seminar. So with that, I'd like to hand the baton over to Brian.
Thanks, Dan. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining our webinar. Before we jump into the demo, I just want to ask a few questions to get a sense of your experience on set. I have my own, but I'm really curious how it lines up with yours. So there'll be a poll that'll pop up somewhere on your screen to answer. The first question, in your experience, how do people tend to communicate creative decisions or discussions and remember them best? Is it verbal communication, what we hear, written communication, what we read, or visual communication, what we see? So I'll give you a couple of seconds there to answer that question. Okay, so far, most of you have said verbal communication. Thanks for your response. I'm just going to stop that poll now. So it turns out that most people remember 10% of what they hear, 20% of what they read, and an astonishing 80% of what they see. My experience on set, I've seen how much longer it takes to try to explain something just using words or text when a picture isn't involved in the conversation. Sometimes it's impossible to discuss something without the picture, and remembering it later is even tougher. So let's look at an example of blocking a scene where visual communication is essential. And what I mean by visual is that it's common practice that a director would walk the crew through the blocking by physically moving through the space with the actors in real time for everyone to see. This is essentially a visual process, obviously combined with verbal. But what if not all the essential crew can be on set at the same time, or the actors aren't available yet, or they're still in makeup, for instance? These factors could make it necessary to repeat or hold up the blocking. Meanwhile, you don't want the crew waiting around to start their job or resetting the camera positions, tweaking the lights, redressing the set, and so on. That wastes so much time. So I just want to get a sense of your experience with another quick poll that I'm going to pull up. On average, how long is spent blocking a scene? Is it 5 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, or longer than 30 minutes? So far, I've got one response for 30 minutes. Okay, so most of you, it's a split. Some of you have said 5 minutes. Some of you have said 30 minutes long. Thanks for the response. Just going to end that poll now. My experience has been that it usually takes on average about 20 minutes, sometimes a little less. Yeah, sometimes it can take 5 minutes. Sometimes it can take more than an hour. I guess it depends on how complex the scene is. Just another quick poll, and this is the last one, I promise. How many times have you had to repeat the blocking, either because of questions, misunderstandings, or if someone wasn't present for the initial discussion, you've had to repeat it? Is it rarely, often, or way too often? Okay, so most of you said often. So thanks for that response. So you can imagine that if you have to repeat the blocking even once, that might turn a 20-minute discussion into a potentially 30 or 40-minute discussion, or even longer. So what I'm going to do now is demonstrate how, using the Onset Assistant, we've helped crews drastically reduce that time. So I'm going to screen share. I've got a tablet on the desk sitting next to me that's connected to our system that we described earlier. It's right now a camera feed in the office. You can see this is 2 examples of our servers. And just so you know, this is a live feed. I'm going to, there's some size reference. We'll adjust the camera a little bit here. So let's take, for instance, blocking a scene, and some of the crew and the actors can't be there. So as a director, what I would do is I would go into the I would invite everyone to join my channel, and you can see that there's 12 channels that different crew members can be in. Everyone's currently in channel 1. But these channels allow for separate conversations to be happening simultaneously. So I'll invite everyone to join the channel and bring up, for instance, the set diagram that I will have pre-uploaded into the system. And I'll start describing football play out what the blocking for this scene is. So let's say Brian starts here and through the door, walks over and sits down in the chair. That's his first position. Second position, Dan might be in the other room here and walks into his first position. They have a little conversation back and forth right here, and then walks over here, let's say, for his third position, and the line of access is like that. So let's put the first camera, A camera over here, for instance, and maybe B camera over here to get coverage. And then I can save this for reference into the system. So even if you were present for the conversation, you need a reminder of what it was, you have access to it. Go back to the live camera feed. We can start talking about like what the framing might be. Maybe go to B camera and say, well, let's start on Dan here and tighten in a little bit. And he walks into the room. His second position is over here. Follow him to that position. And you've got Brian there. And then in the final position, maybe it's an over-the-shoulder shot like this as Dan moves to his third position. And again, you could save that for reference. Brian, Dan. And that's without the actors in the scene. So meanwhile, those actors could be watching this from their makeup trailer on their own tablets that have been set up for them in the makeup trailer, so they can come to set more fully informed about the blocking for the scene. Other crew could be watching near set or even 1,000 miles away with equal clarity and speed from their own tablets. And if there's a question that comes up, like let's say set dress questions like, do you really want that box there? It's like, no, let's get rid of that box. And let's also get rid of those water bottles. It's like, okay, got it. You can see that we're color coded right now. So I'm in orange and another person is in red, having a conversation back and forth visually. Plus, there's a record of that discussion that's easy reference in case someone missed it or needs to check it against their own work. And that's just one type of visual conversation of many that happen on every shoot hundreds of times a day. Can you imagine how much time that would save? So our customers have shown that the Onset Assistant has saved production at least 1 hour a day in the schedule by reducing the time it takes to communicate creative needs on set. And here's the most important part about this method of communicating that makes it faster and superior. When you're discussing a subject, like let's say the placement of this prop that's out of place, while having the exact same view from exactly the same perspective, the conversation goes infinitely faster. I've witnessed crews countless times just circling an issue in the scene with another crew member, which resulted in instant understanding of a fix without having to utter a single word. It's so much faster. Visual communication is direct, clear, and fast, but best summed up with that old phrase, a picture's worth 1,000 words.
Super, Brian. That's great. So let's open up the floor for questions. If anybody has any questions on what they just saw or the system, please feel free to throw them into the public chat, and we'll work it out to answer you. Oh, how many diagrams can we load? That's a great question. Thank you, Ivan.
Yeah, you can just load as many as you want. Basically, you would plug in a laptop as a camera feed into the system, and you could upload any content you wanted to the system. Like, for instance, I pre-uploaded a map. So even in a production meeting, you could say, okay, let's put the main sets here. We've got this street blocked off for trucks, so we'll park all our trucks right along there, and that'll definitely be out of the shot because we're going to be shooting that way for the day, for instance.
Super. Thank you, Brian. We have another question. Oh, yeah, Ivan likes that. Great. So Richard Huggard is asking, what is the range of the system on set?
On set, so we set up multiple access points. So if I go back to the live feed for a second and just show you, here's an example of an access point. It's in the lid, and the range of this one access point is 100 meters in all directions. And so you can daisy chain these together to other access points. We've wired entire studios where, like we're on Grace and Frankie right now, and we've wired that space so that you can go from 4 different studios and have a signal throughout the whole building.
Super. Thank you, Brian. Any other questions? So how many cameras can I view at one time?
The methodology is that each camera has its own feed, but you can always connect multiple cameras at once through a decimator, for instance, and get a quad split or a 16 view split and put it into one of the channel inputs, and then you can have as many as you want on the screen. And we've done that. Actually, there was a show quite recently where the entire show was a 2-camera shoot, and it was just like basically this kind of split of the footage, and everything was recorded as that. But the way our system can record video is if you have 4 cameras plugged in, they record all 4 simultaneously and play them back in sync simultaneously.
He said, sorry, I'm thinking a multi-view style UI.
Yeah, we don't have a multi-view style UI. From the solution is to bring the camera feeds in through a decimator, make it 1 camera feed, and then you can get the split view. That's our solution for that.
Yeah, super. So we've answered your question, Ivan. Thank you for that. Great question. Does anybody else have any questions? No, it looks like we don't, which is great. So what I wanted to say is thank you, everyone, for participating today. This is the first in a series of 4 seminars. We will be sending out an information packet shortly with the slides in the next hour or so, and you should receive an email with the link as well for the recording. And make sure to join us for our next seminar on September 16th, number 2, that will focus on how collaboration helps in making good decisions while on set. So have a great day, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.